At this time, however, some exciting things have been happening. Um, Obedile has become a Ghanaian citizen since the last call. Okay.
And that's
And we want to spend some time talking about repatriation and the Ghanaian citizenship to you as a concept for inspiration for those who may want to go to repatriate or just want to go to visit so that we have an understanding of what's going on there. Now, it's almost talking to the choir since the software has been there many times. And Charles went on the previous purposes. Um, but we're going to go through this anyway since both of you don't aren't aware of the process of repatriation. And then because of this, we're not going to go over things that are already on the website about the Sankofa journey because you can go there and see it. Any questions related to that. But any other things, I mean, obviously the price is there, the dates are there, what's needed is there, passport information, the visa information, all of that information is there, and either fax, registration, or anything else. So without any further ado, I would just, without any further interruption, we're gonna get forward with this. Not having introduce share with and something I can tell you in Chicago.
Yes. Johnny Bravo.
Okay, if I did it,
okay. So, yeah, the idea of this was again to
make
let
it
people.
loud
Can you hear me?
Can't hear you, can't hear you.
and hear.
Vaguely.
Hold on one second. Let me. Actually, let me do this through my phone. The audio may come through more clearly. Hold on one second. I'll come back in. All right. Can people hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Say something so we can tell.
Can you hear me now?
Say that again.
Can you hear me now?
No, still very vague. You get closer to the mic.
It's all a noise.
Yeah, there's so. Asako, can you put yours on mute? It might be the traffic noise.
Okay, we'll do.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. We were saying that the idea for this was that one, we wanted to let people know about the Sankofa journey.
Come closer again.
That one, we wanted to let people know about the Sankofa journey. Then we also wanted to. Can you hear me?
No, it's still vague.
All right, hold on. All right, so this is Dr. Abadele Kamban coming at you live from Ghana. And basically, the idea of this talk was that we wanted to go through the Sankofa journey and then also let people know a little bit about my own repatriation journey, and then finally talk about how we got citizenship. Because the citizenship issue is the most recent issue, I'll take that one first, and then we'll go through repatriation, and then we'll close up dealing with the Sankofa journey and how it all ties in together. Now, the citizenship journey in 2015, and that was we had the Founders Day talk, and at the talk I basically dealt with the topic of produce what you consume and consume what you produce. The name of the video, and you can find it online, is The Forces Arrayed Against Africa, and that's coming from a speech by Kwame Nkrumah where he discusses that as his topic. And in the talk, a little bit before the talk, we had a meeting with several colleagues where it was suggested that, instead of just doing it once a year for Founders Day, we should have monthly meetings. So we, started that idea, and there was a young brother named Moses Kofi Mrekwa Asante, and he was the one who organized that Founders Day program with African Youth Improvement Foundation. And then he started also organizing those monthly meetings. Now, initially, the meetings were called the Abibitumi Casa, Abibitumi monthly meetings. But there was another colleague who also presented during that same program who wanted to name it the Ministry of the Future. He had a different idea earlier that there should be something like a Ministry of the Future, just like you have a Ministry of Interior, Ministry of, this and that here on the continent. That he was like, there needs to be a ministry that deals with the issues pertinent to African people and our future. So that was the idea that we ended up taking up. So it switched from the Abibitumi monthly meetings to the Ministry of the Future. And even if you do a search online for Ministry of the Future, you'll see a few of the talks that I gave as part of the Ministry of the Future. And then, so we had the monthly meetings, and then Dr. Maulana, who was the one who had the idea of Ministry of the Future, he decided to, basically invite an old friend of his who also happened to be the executive secretary to the president, John Mahama. So, and the idea was for citizenship, to discuss citizenship, repatriation, right to return, and all these various issues. So that was organized. Now we started off, I sent an email to our senior assistant registrar and then also the acting director at that time back in, this was October, about these monthly meetings. So we had the meetings every month all the way up to April. But in April we had a field trip, so I took my students on a field trip, so I wasn't able to be there at the April meeting. So I asked the groundskeeper to open the door, and the senior assistant registrar was like, monthly meetings? What monthly meetings? We don't know anything about monthly meetings. So we had a whole email chain of all these things confirming this was going on. But basically, they got shut down at the last minute because of that mix-up. But all was not lost because we got a new director, that's Professor Joji Chikata, and she was, very open to us having meetings about citizenship. So we had another one, actually a couple of meetings also at the Institute of African Studies under her new leadership. And from there, we had the idea of Dr. Maulana, who I mentioned before. He had already gotten citizenship using a particular form, a letter form. So with that citizenship form that he had used, this letter that he would use, he gave us basically a blank template, and people who were at the meeting, there were various organizations represented, individuals represented, and some people were like, this may work, let's try it, Others were like, oh, this will never work, oh, y'all just talking, blah, 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 black people can't do nothing, we tried this before, it didn't work. So, as always, we had two sides of the coin. And, some people were like, let's just try it. And that was my own thing, let's just try it. I told Kala was working on the school that we're doing now. She wasn't able to get her form in on time. She gave it the day after the cutoff date. But yeah, we had 29 people out of about 50 who, decided to just turn in the form. So we were waiting to hear something. We didn't hear anything. And then in the run up to everything, about a week before we finally got the call from the Ministry of Interior, Dr. Maulana said, "Oh yeah, I was speaking with Ambassador Kwesi Kwartey. That's the executive secretary who really pushed the whole agenda." And he said this was just a week before we got the call, and he said, "Oh, I don't know if this is going to go through. Ambassador Kwartey is saying I've been doing everything I can to help you people. I don't know why y'all." He was basically fed up of trying to push these things through, and it was right before the elections. So of course he was stressed out, and they ended up not winning the elections. So he had other things on his mind than our little issues about citizenship. So at that last talk, I was like, you know what? I better just get my 6,000 Ghana cedis together because it's looking like this is not going to go through. But then, the next week, it did end up going through. So we got the call to come down to the Ministry of Interior, and, it was going to be basically a done deal. Now, this is where it actually gets interesting. Actually, it's kind of been interesting, I think, up to this point, but this is where it gets even more interesting, that there is a woman who's here named Dr. Erica Bennett. Now, throughout this entire process of the meetings monthly, of course, Founders Day, which kicked it all off, or Dr. Maulana's idea from a few months even before Founders Day of having a Ministry of the Future. And it was basically two different ideas that just came together. So his idea was, let's have a Ministry of the Future, and he mentioned that on a TV program, a few months before Founders Day. But then at Founders Day, we had the idea of, why are we going to do this just once a year? We need to do this monthly. So just it came together that now let's make those monthly meetings Ministry of the Future. So this woman, she has put herself out in the community as the ambassador for the diaspora. And she decided to call a meeting at her place, the Diaspora Africa Forum. Now, previously it was called the AU, Diaspora Africa Forum, but since, actually I don't know when they changed it, but they had to put up some type of board over the AU because apparently there's some issue with them using the AU name in their own name. But anyway, so AU is African Union. So she called a meeting at her place, and what she wanted to do was to walk with us or go with us over to the Ministry of Interior. And the idea was that she wanted to put her own application in and a few of her close buddies to join in and, to be put out there as, oh, I'm the ambassador, or I got this done, even though she had absolutely nothing to do with any part of the process whatsoever. She wanted to, put herself out there as, oh, look at what I was able to facilitate. Now, the story is that she had put hers in through the 6,000 Ghana CD way previously, which may or may not be the case, and then some of her close buddies. Now, with this, I mentioned that we had the first 29 forms that were submitted to me. Kala, that's my wife, she got her form in the day after, and then there were several other forms that were delivered, and there was a stack of what was supposed to be a second wave. Of course, the second wave never happened because of the elections, and there was a change, and all these other things have taken place since that time. So, with that, it became an issue of, okay, we are being hijacked. We're being hijacked. And even before they started the meeting, they said, we don't want any negativity. Let's all come together in unity. And basically the idea is, we're about to hijack all this good work y'all have been doing. Thank you so much. And we don't want you to say anything about it. So if you do say something about it, you're promoting disunity. And somebody did actually get up and say something about it. A brother named Yao Achiao. He got up and said, something needs to be said. That, your office has not done anything. You're vastly, whatever, actually recorded that whole thing just on my phone. But, he said, oh, y'all people haven't done anything. And she got up and said, you know what? I respect you saying that, but it was very tacky. Basically, and then everybody just shouted him down, oh, that's disunity, that's disunity. So the plane has now been hijacked. Say again? Yeah, people are that night. So anyway, the plane was hijacked. So she went with us. So we were the legitimate group who had the mandate of the president via the executive secretary. And she, by presenting herself as the head of this delegation, inserted her own name in the names of others, saying, I'm the ambassador, blah, blah, blah. Please let me, join into this stack, and me and my close buddies. Now, there are other people who had already put their names in through that 6,000 system that was already in place, including a good friend of the family, Dr. Afia Zakia. And, the story that we got from our so-called ambassador is, because we had already put our forms in, that's why they added us. But we know other people personally who got their legitimate 6,000 CD way in, but they were not included because it was a thing of a hijacking. If you're my good buddy, then you get in too. If you're not my good buddy, then later for you. So all throughout that day, people got wind that the ambassador was adding her own people to the list. So other people were like, well, we had put in our forms in the second wave. Why shouldn't we be up there? And how can she jump? She had nothing to do with the process whatsoever. How can she get in on this? And people who had gotten their forms in, including my wife. So Kala went down there with the babies crying and whatever. What they told her at the Ministry of Interior is, if Ambassador Bennett gives the go-ahead, then she will get added to the list. So we call Ambassador Bennett, and Ambassador Bennett says, I don't know why they're saying that. I don't know why they're saying that I can't do anything. People's names, people who are on the original 29 have been vetted over the last few months. They did background checks, blah, blah, blah. And as she was saying this is why I said, this is how I know that this is not an honest person. Because the forms were, let me not say bootleg, the forms were just forms. And people were in front of me in the office handwriting in the forms. So that created an issue where the Ministry of Interior got many of the names incorrect. And also there was no place for salutation on the form, so they thought some women were men, they thought some men were women. There's a woman named Aloma that had Mr. Aloma. There's a brother named Setu Nurala, and they had it as Setu Nutala. And there were no pictures, there were no fingerprints, there was nothing. It was just a handwritten form, no contact information on most of them. And I knew that because I was a part of the process. So when this woman who didn't know how any of this happened is telling me that, they did background checks, I said, this is how I know that this woman is a liar. She is not truthful. Because how can you do background checks when all you have is somebody's name misspelled? That's all you have is a misspelled name. How do you do background checks on that? However, what she was able to do is when she was inserting her names of other people that she wanted added, she had somebody who she did not like taken away from the original 29. and then she said that, this was because of the government was able to trace that in their background checks that they did. And this is where I'm like, this woman is a straight up liar. No background check. And I actually did a search for that woman's name, which is a relatively common name, to the tune of, if you type her name in, over 600,000 search engine results come up in Google. So with no picture, no fingerprints, just her name written, how are you going to tell me that they did a background check? So anyway, OT. So all of this is to say that this is the 11th hour people were adding themselves. So it created, of course, a lot of confusion in the community because, people who had gotten their forms in, such as my wife and others, they were like, we're coming down to the Ministry of Interior. And what they kept saying at the Ministry of Interior is, this woman is saying she's your ambassador or whatever. That's who we're saying. So if she gives the go-ahead and you had your form in, then we'll give it. She blocked all of them. And then there were other people who had gotten their information in already. They had gone through the regular process. They had paid their 6,000 Ghana cedis, and also they were all blocked. So it came down to, it didn't matter whether you got your form in. It didn't matter if you had already registered the right way, the regular way. That if you were not in her crew of chums, then you were not going to get in there. So anyway, this was a major issue, and people were like, you know what, let's get through the day. This is December 28th. Let's just get through the day. And then after that, we're going to have to deal with this woman because her office has been in the Du Bois Center. She's been going for like some 9 years, and she's never gotten any of this done. This was just something that was happening in African studies, us having monthly meetings, a personal contact with one of the scholars who knew the executive secretary. And over all of these years, she could have had monthly meetings. Over all these years, she knows all these people who she's been telling that she's an ambassador. She could have pushed this through. But rather than pushing through something that's helpful to Africans of the diaspora, she just hops on the back, she piggybacks and usurps the whole thing. And this is the usurping part, that on the program for that day, and the complete swearing in ceremony is on a Bibi Tumikasa. On the program, they didn't put the name of Dr. Maulana, who was the one who had that personal contact and brought in the executive secretary to the president to African Studies to discuss this with us, who had pushed through the whole agenda, that his name did not feature on the program whatsoever. Myself, who have provided the space at African Studies, if you're not putting him on, you definitely not putting me on. But that was that. So we come to the swearing in ceremony. A lot of the people who were saying that this would never work, they ended up coming up, and showing up there in the audience as moral support or whatever they were doing. They had suggested, and this lets you know I don't know what it lets you know, but I'll just tell you that some of the hijackers said, oh, on that day, let's all wear white. Let's all wear white. That's a suggested dress. I was like, we are living out Marcus Garvey's dream, and you talking about let's wear white. That's a suggestion. I don't think that's a very good suggestion. We're wearing red, black, and green. So if you look at my video, you'll know my great-grandfather was the Knight Commander of the UNIA, Auditor General, and other positions in the UNIA. So I said we're rocking red, black, and green. Black powerful. Bibi Tumi, represent. So that's, just what I did. And other people who wore white, one sister, she was like, that was much better. We all should have wore red, black, and green. You did that for us. I'm glad you did that. That represents us. But, the program, other than, the hijacking, which the whole program consisted of, the president came out. And the president does not do that job. He does not hand out certificates to people and say, oh, you're a citizen. He got people to do that. But, he gave his speech and he said that I'm not giving you anything. I'm, just giving back to you what is yours, restoring what was stolen from you. And it was so profound for him to say that. So, they called our names and we all walked up and shook hands with the president of Ghana. And, it was very powerful. At the end, we gave awards to him, to the ambassador, Kwesi Kwate, who was the executive secretary who pushed it all through. And then also somebody had the idea of, just for, I don't know what sake, let's give an award, the tiniest award to our so-called ambassador who hijacked the whole program. So I don't know. I don't know whether that was sarcastic. I don't know whether that was let's just, let bygones be bygones or what. But they did that. And, that's what happened. Yeah, something to Dr. Maulana as well. Now, with this, we just had a meeting yesterday on the way forward. There was a meeting at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in late October. And in the meeting, our so-called ambassador was told to get all of the members of the diaspora community together, and so that we could go through this diaspora engagement policy. Now, what I got was an email that said, oh, there's this event at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The invitation is not transferable, and that was from the past president of AAAG, that's African American Association of Ghana. Now, part of the interesting thing is that this is Brenda Joyce was the past president. She was the one who sent me the invitation and said, this is not transferable, this is not transferable, making it seem like I don't know what. But she was one of the people who told the other members of her organization, AAAG, to just hold off. I know Dr. Maulana is doing this, just hold off. She didn't put in any form. She was saying that she's not interested in citizenship, so forth and so on. However, she was one of the ones who our so-called ambassador added at the last minute, and she sprinted to the front. So even though she disenfranchised all of her members and told them all to hold up, when she got that, call, whenever she got it, from the ambassador saying this is going down, we're about to hijack this, we're putting your name on the list, she very quick, fast, and in a hurry, was responded to it, and she became one of that additional crew who added themselves to the 29, which became 28 because one of the 29 was taken out by the ambassador. Of course, not by any background checks, because you can't do background checks on a handwritten form and you can't even spell the person's name right. You can't even Google the person's name if you don't have their name right. And that was a question that people kept asking. They were like, do we add pictures? Do we add photos? They were like, no. And that's part of why people are like, this is bootleg, this ain't gonna work. How are you gonna do this? A handwritten bootleg form and this is gonna slide through. How is that gonna work? No fingerprint, no picture, no what? Get out of here. You're playing. But it did work. So we came back to, at the day, we did this, but this is where I was at, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So the people at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, thinking that she was an ambassador, thinking she was accredited by the AU, and again I mentioned that the AU part of her signboard has been covered up, and that there's something to that. But they called her and said, oh, get your people together, bring people from your community together. If it wasn't for that last minute email from the former president of AAAG, I wouldn't have been there. Dr. Maulana snuck in through the back door, through however he was able to hear about it. One or two other people snuck in, and that was the representation. It was her, the so-called ambassador, the former president of AAAG, and the head of the coalition, who was very tight with the so-called ambassador, who were there, supposedly representing our community. So they said they wanted at least 30 people there. They would have only gotten about 3 people, if not for just a last-minute email and then other people just sneaking in. So as we sat in on this program, it's supposed to be a diaspora engagement policy. Everything is about Ghanaians on vacation. Basically, if you were already Ghanaian and you went abroad, then the diaspora engagement policy is to you. So the whole policy is just talking about, if you're a Ghanaian abroad, this is how to renew your passport. If you're a Ghanaian abroad, this is how to get in touch with your hometown, your home village association. If you're a Ghanaian abroad, this is how to get in touch with your old school association. All these types of things that are completely irrelevant for Africans from the diaspora. So we were sitting there, and even those who, were supposed to, who were the hijackers, even they were like, what's going on? How are you going to do this? So I raised my hand and I was like, diaspora, you have to define it to incorporate those of us who were kidnapped and enslaved. And we ended up giving our input to that. So the way forward is that's something that we're trying to push through so that other people can also get their citizenship in that way. Ambassador Kwesi Kwate is running to be, or campaigning, however we want to call it, to be the deputy chair of the AU. So, that's another possible avenue in terms of citizenship. The diaspora engagement policy, the AU said that they were looking at Ghana as the model. So if our input into this policy gets accepted, then it'll become the template that other AU countries would use. So there are several things that we're looking at, and then also contacting the current government as well. So these are all avenues that we're doing in order to make sure that other Africans also get, their citizenship. Despite this hijacking crew who blocked those who had gotten their forms in, who blocked those who had already put in their forms and paid their other forms, the 6,000 Ghana Cedi way, that they blocked them and then they usurped the program. But what we're trying to do is circumvent that and still get our Pan-African agenda rolling. So that is that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The 4 different avenues that I outlined are the multi-pronged approach that we're doing and trying to secure a process. So one is contacting the current sitting government, the interim minister of foreign affairs, in order to see if the same way in terms of the forms that we did will go through. That's one. 2 is through the diaspora engagement policy, where we put in various things such as right to return, right to own business, waiver of all the various things that they say you have to do. That's another. The third way is the Ambassador Kwesi Kwartey, who was the one who pushed it through as the executive secretary. He was running to be deputy chair of the AU. This is the third way that we could get it going in that way. And then the fourth way, what is it? AU forms, old forms. I mentioned the fourth way, but it's escaping me. But basically, the process is not entirely clear because we've had a change of government, but the precedent has been set. So we're approaching it from multiple avenues in terms of how it can be done for those who either legitimately got their forms in, for those who also had legitimately gone through the regular standard process. And there are people, I know one brother who I did his website for him back in the day. He is married to a Ghanaian, and he put his thing through the regular channel 10 years ago, over 10 years ago now. So he's just been sitting waiting. And the hijackers, they had put their forms in just recently. Ghana Caribbean Association, and they put their forms in through the regular channel about 2 or 3 years ago, dealing with lawyers, whatever. All of them have been sitting, and the hijackers' forms would have been sitting if they did not walk into the Ministry of Interior with us and say, oh, you know what, we're with them, push us through with them, or whatever it is that they did. So, all of this is to say that we are pursuing vigorously multiple avenues in order to see how this can be done for those who are not there. But one thing that we are not doing is depending on the goodwill of the blockers and hijackers, because we already have a precedent of them blocking people who got their forms in and were supposed to be pushed through the second wave. Then they blocked those who had already gone through the regular channel, but who didn't happen to be in the select crew of These Are My Folks, and that's the only one. And I actually recorded all the phone conversations where they said, if she gives a go-ahead, then we'll add them to the list, because we just added the other folks to the list for her. So if she gives a go-ahead, and then I got recorded where saying, no, I'm not going to do it for any of these folks. Yep. Yeah, so in terms of the lobby, people are still giving, some of the people who are like, this will never work, when they saw it work, now they giving me their form. So just in terms of what to do with those forms, it's not clear. That's the entire point that I'm telling you, that there is nothing set. If if the NDC had been reelected, then that would have been a done deal. But with the MPP, we're not entirely sure. We met with the interim minister for foreign affairs. She's like, I'm down with defining the diaspora to include you all, so forth and so on. But it's not entirely clear the process. But what I'm doing is I'm acting as a repository for some of those forms, so that when it does become clear, we push those through as well. That's one. Also, Mama Amicus in Cape Coast, who got her citizenship along with us, she had put in her forms legitimately, just like everybody else. She said that, some of the people who are in the meeting who happened to put in the forms, they've been here for like maybe 1, 2, 3 years. But then there are people who've been here for 50 years who just happen not to be in the right spot at the right time. And she was like, there needs to be some type of criteria where, people can be judged according to whatever the criteria is set. So that's one. Yeah. So also, just in terms of the second question, what was that? Oh yeah, getting her out. So there was a meeting. So there was a meeting yesterday about how to deal with this woman, and the questions that came up is, if she has a mandate from the AU or anyone else, who exactly gave her that mandate? Because the chairs of the African Union have come and gone. Mugabe, now they have somebody new coming in. There was somebody before him. Like, it's like, how can the person who appointed you be gone, but you are, ambassador for life? What is this? Presidents have come and gone. This is the third different administration come and gone. Ambassadors have come and gone. Kwesi Kwartey was ambassador to Ethiopia before that. He was ambassador somewhere else. So everybody's ambassadorship comes to an end, but you've been ambassador for life. And part of, I'm sure this AU part of the soundboard being covered up is that she didn't have a right to use the AU if she ever had it, period. She definitely doesn't have it now, and that's why she had to cover up this AU from the front of her building. So in pursuing that, people said they want to sign a petition in order to get her out. And she may not even be in legitimately anyway, but if the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is contacting her and saying, contact your people, and she's blocking it and not contacting anybody, then that's a problem. If the Ministry of Interior is telling us, the people who put the whole thing together, that only if she gives the go-ahead will we add in people who have their forms in legitimately. Only if she gives a go-ahead are we going to add the names of people who had gone through the right way, the channel that was already existing. Oh, she's not one of her buddies? No, then she doesn't get added. So, there's a sister in the community who is spearheading, putting the petition together. People throughout the diaspora are going to sign it and then deliver it to the current government to be like, this is not our ambassador. She doesn't represent us. All we have is blocking and usurping over 9 years. You haven't done anything. The programs that we were doing in African studies, you could have been doing that. You have done nothing for us. Under your watch, the definition of diaspora went from, us to Ghanaians on vacation. What's up? You're not representing our interests. And not only are you not representing our interests, you are going directly against our interests. Yeah. Say it again. You mean who in the government contacts her? So the question is, people are acknowledging her as our point person, but who is it? That it's not an individual. It's not any individual. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs told her, "Oh, we want you to get people from the diaspora," and then she went in to the Ministry of Interior with us, sat down with them, with her in the room. We were out in the lobby saying whatever she was saying. Now her name got added to the list, so she inserted herself in as I'm the ambassador, blah blah blah, whatever. Add me to the list, add my buddies to the list, or whatever else that she did to get her buddies added. So apparently. Yes, they've automatically assumed that she is a legitimate something, and that's the state of affairs until somebody tells them something different. So different people from different parts of the government, Nataki. Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a different body from the Ministry of Interior, but on her word, they're taking that she as the ambassador, and nobody is asking, okay, who did you get your ambassadorship through, and when does your mandate end?
One issue with her is she knows so many political people.
So Kala is saying that one
Africa.
issue with her is that she has inserted herself in for so long across Africa, so she can call up people, past presidents that she's been rubbing elbows with, other folks, that she has been doing whatever for, whether they're part. And another thing that came up is that she is registered as an NGO in the United States in Washington, D.C. And then another brother said he actually went to Addis Ababa to the AU to ask what are her credentials, and they said to him that she doesn't have any credentials through the AU, that she sits at the AU as an NGO amongst many NGOs, but that doesn't make her an ambassador, and that doesn't give her any credentials from the AU. So, but what we need is not him telling us that he went there. We need some documentation that says that. And then, especially if we can get that. Say again?
What's the question?
Well, yeah, for the NGO, I was thinking specifically about Addis Ababa from the AU to say she's not credentialed from the AU.
What was the question?
So Nataki was asking if there's somebody in DC who can get anything that shows that she is an NGO registered in DC.
I think it was Yao who saw that the DAF is registered. He said you can look it up online, Google.
Mm-hmm.
What was the comment or question?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's the comment or question?
Can you send me the criteria that they sent to him? Can you contact him and get that criteria? So the comment is the World Africa Diaspora Union has been trying to get a seat at the AU, and she's saying that she knows that this woman cannot be a member or whatever she's calling herself of the AU because she would not fit whatever the criteria is. So I'm asking what the criteria is so that we can have that as well. Yeah, most members of the country. As a sixth region. Right. Yeah, so that's that. So that was our journey to citizenship. And Mama Imacus down in Ogwa, so-called Cape Coast, gave me a whole packet of things that she had been doing in concert with other people, you know, writing letters to past governments and trying to put together petitions and things of that nature that didn't come to, you know, any fruition. And this one was extraordinary because, you know, within the course of 3 months, we were able to go from, you know, handing over the forms to getting citizenship. So, you know, all of these have been.
Did you show your passport?
Yeah. Yeah. And over the course of 3 months, we did what our so-called ambassador couldn't do in 9 years, and it had to end up piggybacking or usurping, whichever one you prefer, just to get her own thing through. So that or stealing, you know, whatever term you like.
None of them good.
None of them are good. So yeah, that was just the journey to citizenship. And again, from Founders Day to a series of multiple meetings to bring in the ambassador to, you know, going back and forth with reports to finally even a week before it looking like it wasn't coming through. And then the very next week we got a call that we're asked to go to Ministry of Interior. And then the woman calls and says, no, let's have a quick meeting before y'all go. I want to lead your delegation down to the ministry. So that I can pretend to be a part of you. Of course, that's not how she put it. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Neighbor. Mm-hmm.
What was the comment?
Mm-hmm.
And he had a movie on, he was done a book on movie to Arkansas. And was it Dr. Ben? Dr. Ben had said, what's the state now? Does a white, can a white person teach black studies? And Dr. Ben replied, hell no. And her research has shown exactly that. Because what we know about Booker T. Washington has been
Ajakweko, please you mute your Skype.
Much money to invest in Tuskegee so that he could train teachers who would teach in all the areas of African development that we would need. And I say that to say that if we don't have people who understand the depth of the evil of the white people, then we will eat whatever is, and that's what's happening in the country for African people as well. So I applaud you and the work of the committee for bringing this forward, and we have to continue this fight. Yes, I will call Dr. Jeffries to find out about getting the information about, especially for Wadu, and to see what needs to be done. He has been working tirelessly, and he's an elder who needs bodies to assist, but he will not give up the fight. He even had to, validate. So it's still important that we continue to do this work. So I say thank you.
Abibi to me.
That's me here.
Okay.
To move forward,
Mhm.
we want to see if anybody has any questions about anything Obama has said, so far. Before we move into the Sankofa journey.
Yeah, Mama, you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, this is NFU in Chicago. I had problems with my Skype, but I was able to join and hear most of the account of what happened. And I just want to echo, we are so proud and pleased and happy and all of that for all the work you and everyone has done on that side of the Ethiopian Sea. I missed the quote unquote ambassador's name. Can you give her name to me?
That's Dr. Erica Bennett.
I have a normal spelling of
Erieka. Erie. It's a different spelling. And then Bennett is regular.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so the people were livid yesterday. They were like, we got to get her out.
Yeah, emphasize the fact that the group has to come together. This ought to show the importance of students.
Right. Yeah, so if nothing else on that, I also wanted to go into repatriation and then come to the Sankofa journey specifically.
Right.
Are we okay?
The only other thing on that is I would just say, for those who are on the call or in other places, it seemed like with the petition, with the like Gandhi statue, that I don't know if the favorable outcome of them deciding to take it down also had something to do with it getting national attention, or excuse me, international attention from other countries, and perhaps people on this call and others can play a role in, if it doesn't immediately get the kind of response about it, getting more exposure. Ideally not, because hopefully a lot of people's first experience with, or we don't want to impress upon people that there's a lot of corruption and things like that, but it may be helpful in some calculated way.
Yeah, so you can help publicize it once it goes. We're starting off locally, but if necessary, then, just like you're saying, get it to go global.
as Obade has mentioned, you know, she has gone around the continent, creating relationships with presidents and past presidents. So, um, but I think that will not. I really think that will not have an effect on if the Ghanaians there, after the diaspora and patriots there, lobby together. I think that could be successful.
Right.